Imagine yourself lying back, safe and comfortable, while a calm tide of words carries you somewhere far from your daily thoughts. Tonight, that tide is not a rushing wave, but a slow, steady current, like a lullaby whispered by the ocean itself. The water is cool, gentle, and endlessly patient. It moves at its own pace, refusing to hurry, refusing to be rushed. And as you follow its rhythm, you find yourself gliding toward a world where entire cities sleep beneath the sea. There is something profoundly soothing about the idea of a drowned city. Not terrifying, not violent, but strangely peaceful. These were places where people once walked, laughed, cooked, traded, worshipped, and argued just as we do today. Now those same streets are silent, covered in sand and silt, resting beneath a veil of water. The ocean, with all its depth and mystery, has taken them in, holding them close, like a parent tucking away old memories in a chest. For centuries, sailors told tales of ghostly towers rising from the waves, of domes shimmering faintly just below the surface. Fishermen claimed their nets would snag on stone walls or broken statues, long forgotten by history. And while many of those tales belonged to the realm of myth, the truth turned out to be even stranger, and perhaps more beautiful. Whole cities really do exist beneath the waves. Not just Atlantis, that most famous of fables, but real, tangible towns, streets, temples, harbors, all resting under the sea, waiting to be found again. And what is most remarkable is not just their existence, but the way we come to know them. There is no sudden discovery, no dramatic rush of action. Instead, archaeologists drift slowly through the murky water, carefully brushing away centuries of silt, recording each stone, each artifact, with the patience of someone who knows they are touching lives that ended thousands of years ago. The work is quiet, meticulous, and almost meditative. In this sense, the drowned cities are not only for history, they are perfect companions for sleep. The ocean does not rush, yet it always wins. For as long as humans have built homes, the sea has waited patiently at the edges, creeping forward in tides and storms, claiming land piece by piece. Some cities are lost in an instant, taken by earthquakes, floods, or tsunamis. Others slip away slowly, forgotten by their people, surrendered to rising waters or shifting sands. And behind every drowned city is a story of both nature's quiet persistence and humanity's fragile place upon the earth. When we think of cities, we often imagine permanence: stone walls, paved roads, temples rising high above the ground. These feel like anchors, as though once built, they should endure forever. But nothing we build is immune to time. The earth moves, rivers swell, volcanoes shake the land, and the ocean, with its relentless rhythm, takes what it will. The ancient Greeks told of earthquakes sent by Poseidon, the god of the sea, as punishments for human arrogance. In India, legends spoke of the ocean swallowing entire kingdoms when rulers forgot humility. And across the Mediterranean, sailors whispered of harbors disappearing overnight, taken by storms that left no trace. While myths embroidered these stories with divine anger and cosmic justice, the truth is both simpler and more humbling. Land shifts, water rises, and even the strongest stone cannot resist forever. Consider the slow rise of sea levels, something our ancestors noticed long before science explained it. Generations of fishermen and farmers would mark where the shoreline once stood, only to see it inch backward year after year. A market square might become marshland, a temple might sink ankle deep, and within a lifetime or two, the ocean would have claimed it entirely. Imagine the quiet sorrow of watching familiar streets disappear, knowing that your children would not walk the same ground you did. Sometimes the sea struck suddenly. A tremor beneath the earth might trigger a wave taller than a building, rushing inland with unstoppable force. Entire towns vanished in moments, their voices silenced under tons of water and debris. Survivors would tell the tale, but their children's children would embellish it with myth until no one remembered whether it had been nature or the gods who had drowned their ancestors' homes. And then there is human forgetfulness. We are a restless species, always moving, always building anew. When war, famine, or opportunity drove people away from a city, the ruins remained empty shells waiting for the sea. Without hands to repair the walls or sweep the courtyards, the ocean took advantage. Tides slipped in, rivers overflowed. Slowly, the sea filled the silence. What began as abandonment ended as submersion. This is why drowned cities fascinate us. They are reminders that nothing lasts forever, not even the proudest civilizations. The temples of gods, the palaces of kings, the markets filled with voices, all of them can fall silent, hidden beneath waves that never tire. And yet, these same waters preserve as much as they destroy. Walls, statues, pots, and tools rest in near-perfect stillness beneath the sand, waiting for patient hands to rediscover them centuries later. If you were to dive into the shallow waters off the coast of southern Greece, you might expect nothing more than sand and fish, but hidden just a few meters below the surface lies a town older than almost any other underwater city we know. Its name is Pavlopetri, and it has rested quietly beneath the sea for nearly 5,000 years. To enter Pavlopetri is to step, or rather, drift into a world where time has been slowed, suspended in the soft cradle of the ocean. Pavlopetri is not a myth. It is not a fable told to children or a dream of philosophers. It is real. Streets, houses, courtyards, and tombs still lie where their builders placed them, the outlines clear and almost haunting in their order. This is no pile of rubble scattered by the sea. This is a city with a plan, a heartbeat, and a story. Discovered in 1967 by Nicholas Fleming, a British archaeologist, Pavlopetri immediately captured the imagination of the world. What stunned researchers was not just its age, it dates back to the early Bronze Age, but its remarkable preservation. Despite lying under the sea for thousands of years, its layout remains visible, like a ghost town, waiting patiently for visitors. Walking, or rather swimming through Pavlopetri is unlike exploring any other ruin. On land, ancient cities often crumble, eroded by wind and weather, scavenged by later generations for building stone. But underwater, Pavlopetri has been sheltered. The waves that once claimed it also protected it, covering it in sand, preserving its streets like pressed flowers between the pages of a book. Picture it. Divers descending slowly, the light dimming as they reach the seabed. Before them, walls rise no higher than a meter or two, but their arrangement is unmistakable. Narrow lanes stretch out, intersecting with wider thoroughfares. Rooms open onto courtyards. Wells, cisterns, and shrines still rest where families once gathered. It is as if the town is sleeping, waiting for the footsteps of people who will never return. And yet, as haunting as it is, Pavlopetri is also oddly comforting. To see a place so old, preserved beneath the sea, reminds us that human lives, however brief, always leave traces. The potter's wheel, the loom, the hearth, the market stall, all of these echoes lie waiting under the water, silent, but not forgotten. There is a rhythm to archaeology, and nowhere is it gentler or more hypnotic than beneath the waves. Imagine a diver descending through cool Mediterranean water, air bubbles rising in lazy spirals above them. The light filters down in rippling bands, soft and golden, as if the sun itself has grown tired and decided to stretch across the seabed. Below, Pavlopetri waits, silent and patient, as it has waited for thousands of years. The archaeologist begins the ritual. Not a hurried dig, not a frantic uncovering, but a slow, careful mapping. Every stone, every wall fragment, every faint outline in the sand must be noted. It is not enough to say, "Here lies a city." They must understand how it was built, how it was lived in, how its people moved through its streets. And so, with ropes and measuring tapes, waterproof slates and cameras, The archaeologist begins the dance of documentation. Picture the diver gliding across a stone wall, less than a meter high, tracing its line with one gloved hand. A second diver follows, noting angles and distances, sketching rough outlines. Each mark is part of a larger puzzle, slowly coming into focus. Day by day, dive by dive, the lines of Pavlopetri grow clearer, not through imagination, but through patient, methodical work. It may sound tedious, and in many ways, it is. Hours of hovering over broken foundations, measuring distances of 2 meters here, 3 meters there, scribbling figures into waterproof notebooks that grow damp with condensation. But there is something deeply soothing in that repetition, that unhurried devotion to detail. The diver's breathing becomes a metronome, steady, slow, echoing through the mask as they work. Archaeologists often describe the sensation of mapping Pavlopetri as almost meditative. Suspended in the water, movement slowed, senses heightened. They lose track of time. There is only the task in front of them, this stone, this line, this quiet measurement. And in this way, they mirror the city itself. Pavlopetri too has slowed, its bustling life reduced to stillness, its voices replaced by silence. The work becomes a communion, one patient rhythm meeting another. Sometimes, entire days yield little progress. A diver may spend hours carefully brushing sand from a corner, only to discover it is nothing more than a natural outcrop, not a wall. Another may trace what looks like a street, only to realize it fades into confusion. Yet these failures are part of the process. Each stone identified, each line mapped, adds to the greater whole. Whether it confirms or corrects an assumption, nothing is wasted, because everything is detail. As the maps grow more complete, a ghost city takes shape on paper. Lanes, houses, workshops, shrines, each carefully sketched. The lines are faint at first, but slowly the city reveals itself, not as ruins, but as a living plan. Archaeologists can see where people once walked, where families once gathered, where rituals once took place, all from stones resting quietly beneath the sea. This ritual, stone by stone, line by line, is not merely about measurement. It is an act of respect. By mapping Pavlopetri, archaeologists restore dignity to its memory. They remind the world that this was not just a collection of stones, but a place of human lives, of laughter, of grief, of countless moments, now reduced to whispers. So as you listen, perhaps drifting into drowsiness, think of those divers, suspended in calm water, tracing outlines in silence, their breathing slow, their movements deliberate, their focus unbroken. In their patience, there is peace, and in that peace, there is a kind of beauty, one that lingers long after the dive is done. Close your eyes and try to picture it. Pavlopetri, 5,000 years ago, before the sea crept in. The sun is bright, warming stone walls and earthen courtyards. The air smells faintly of smoke from cooking fires, mixed with the salt of the nearby sea. Children's voices echo through narrow streets, their laughter sharp and quick as they chase each other past doorways. Dogs bark. A potter hums quietly at his wheel. A mother kneels to grind grain. Life, ordinary and precious, moves in its gentle rhythm. This is what Pavlopetri offers us, not a story of kings or conquests, but of everyday lives. Archaeologists, mapping its streets, can imagine where people gathered, where markets were held, where rituals were performed. They see homes clustered together, some larger, some smaller, telling us of families, of neighbors, of communities that worked and lived side by side. Imagine standing in a marketplace. To your left, a trader calls out his wares: olive oil, pottery, tools of bronze. To your right, a woman lays out dyed textiles, the colors vivid in the sunlight. Children tug at their mother's hands, begging for sweets or toys. Above it all, the murmur of voices, the buzz of daily life. None of it extraordinary, yet all of it deeply human. Meals would have been simple but sustaining. Bread baked from ground grain, fish caught from the nearby sea, olives pressed into oil. Families gathered in courtyards, sharing food, stories, and warmth. Festivals lightly filled the streets with music and dance. Moments of joy that lifted the rhythm of ordinary days into celebration. And then there were the quiet rituals of survival. Repairing nets, weaving cloth, shaping pots, carrying water. Each act small, each act necessary, each act a thread in the tapestry of daily life. Archaeology cannot capture the sound of a child's laughter or the warmth of bread fresh from the oven, but it can trace the outlines of the spaces where these things happened. And from those outlines, our imagination fills in the rest. What is most striking is how familiar it feels. Thousands of years separate us from Pavlopetri, yet their lives echo our own. They cared for their children, worked to provide for their families, honored their gods, and hoped for a future. Their houses may have been simpler, their tools cruder, but their hopes and fears were not so different from ours. When we gaze upon Pavlopetri, we are reminded that history is not just grand monuments and famous names. It is the everyday. It is the countless quiet lives lived out of the spotlight. And in remembering them, we also remember ourselves. So let yourself imagine those streets, alive once more with voices and footsteps. See the pottery glistening in the sun. Hear the chatter of neighbors. Feel the heat of the midday air. Then let it all drift away again, sinking beneath the surface, where silence replaces sound and memory becomes a whisper. In that cycle, life, loss, remembrance, Pavlopetri still lives, not only beneath the sea, but within us. If Pavlopetri is a whisper of the everyday, Thonis Heracleion is a story of grandeur. Once the bustling gateway to ancient Egypt, this city stood proud, where the Nile met the Mediterranean. For centuries, it was a hub of trade and religion, where merchants from Greece, Phoenicia, and beyond brought their goods, and pilgrims came to honor the gods. Then, as suddenly as a dream fades at dawn, it was gone. Heracleon's story begins in myth and ends in silence. Ancient writers spoke of it, though often in fragments. It was said to be a place of wealth, where massive temples rose above the harbor and statues of gods guarded the shore. It was here, they claimed, that Helen of Troy and Paris once sought refuge before their fateful journey to Troy. But by the time historians began to look for it, Heracleion had vanished completely, as though swallowed whole by the sea. For centuries, no one knew where it lay. Sailors speculated, scholars debated, but the city remained a phantom, remembered only in name. Then, in the year 2000, French archaeologist Frank Goddio and his team discovered what no one had expected. Beneath the waters of Abukir Bay, Heracleion slept. Diving into the bay, they found more than ruins. They found an entire port, preserved in astonishing detail. Massive statues, toppled yet intact, lay scattered across the seabed. Stone blocks the size of houses, inscriptions in hieroglyphs, coins, jewelry, pottery, all waiting beneath layers of silt. The discovery was breathtaking. Imagine surfacing from that first dive, heart racing, hands trembling, knowing you had just touched the stones of a city lost for more than 1,000 years. It must have felt like waking a giant from its slumber. And yet, even here, in the midst of grandeur, the work returned to its slow rhythm. Divers could not simply rush through. They had to sift carefully, record precisely, and allow the city to emerge stone by stone, just as Pavlopetri had. Heracleion reminds us that not all drowned cities are small villages. Some were giants of their age, places of power and influence, and yet they too could vanish. Scholars believe earthquakes, soil liquefaction, and rising seas all conspired to pull Heracleion under. The mighty port became silt, the temples became shadows, and the sea claimed even this proud city as its own. And so, as we drift through its story tonight, let us remember, no matter how powerful, no matter how grand, all cities rest in the hands of time. The sea has no favorites. It keeps what it will, and when it is ready, it reveals its secrets once more. The ocean guards its secrets jealously. When Heracleion was rediscovered, it was not as though the city simply appeared, laid out, and waiting to be admired. No, the sea had wrapped it in layers of silt, cloaking walls, statues, and pottery beneath a blanket of fine sediment. To uncover it required not only skill but infinite patience, a kind of quiet conversation with the seabed, where each grain of sand was gently persuaded to move aside. Heracleion sprawled across several square kilometers, and unlike Pavlopetri, which rested in clear shallows, this port city lay deeper, blanketed in mud. Divers could barely see a few feet ahead. The city was not ruined in the way ancient ruins on land often are weathered, cracked, or plundered. Instead, it was softened, blurred, hidden, as though time itself had wrapped it in gauze. Excavation here was not the drama of shovels striking stone. Divers floated in near silence, using delicate suction devices to sip away sediment. The water clouded with every movement, visibility shrinking to nothing, forcing the team to work slowly, carefully, waiting for the silt to settle before continuing. Hours were spent uncovering the corner of a statue, the edge of a column, the rim of a jar. Progress was measured not in leaps but in inches. Every shard of pottery was catalogued. Imagine the diver's hand brushing across the mud until fingers closed around something smooth, something curved, a piece of clay, baked thousands of years ago, once part of a pot that held grain, oil, or wine. Lifted from the seabed, it seemed almost insignificant. Yet for archaeologists, each shard was a syllable in a larger story, a piece of a language that, when assembled, spoke of lives once lived here. The statues were breathtaking. Colossal figures of pharaohs, queens, and gods, toppled but intact, lay scattered across the seabed like sleepers. Imagine swimming past a giant head, its features serene, its eyes half closed, as though still dreaming beneath the waves. To raise them required enormous care. Winches and slings were maneuvered with precision, divers guiding each movement so as not to damage the ancient stone. Days, even weeks, might pass before a single statue emerged into the air once more. But the most delicate treasures were often the smallest. Gold coins, tiny amulets, carved beads, objects so light they could vanish into silt with the flick of a fin. To retrieve them demanded steady hands and absolute concentration. One careless movement, and an artifact might disappear again, swallowed by the seabed for another century. This slow attention, this reverence for even the tiniest fragment, mirrored the larger truth of underwater archaeology. Nothing is rushed, nothing forced. The ocean reveals itself only to those willing to wait. And so, year after year, Heracleion emerged, not in a flood of discovery, but in a steady trickle, each season of excavation adding another layer of understanding. Piece by piece, divers reconstructed the city's vast temples, its harbors, its networks of canals and causeways. Slowly, the outlines of a grand port came into focus. Not a myth, not a rumor, but a real city, once alive with voices, now murmuring only through shards of pottery and statues beneath the waves. If Heracleion was a port of trade, it was also a port of the gods. Ancient texts described it as a place of temples, where both Egyptians and visiting Greeks came to honor their deities. And indeed, as the city has been uncovered, some of the most extraordinary finds have been religious. Statues of gods and pharaohs, temple foundations, and sacred inscriptions, all resting quietly beneath the water. Among the most striking discoveries were the colossal statues, Imagine gliding through dim green water and suddenly coming face to face with a stone figure several meters tall, its face calm, lips curved in a faint, eternal smile. Though toppled, though resting on its side, it retained a majesty that time and tide had not erased. These statues once stood in Heracleion's great temple, dedicated to Amun-Gereb, the supreme god of the city. Worshippers would have come by boat, passing between these towering guardians as they approached the inner sanctum. Now, those guardians lie beneath the waves, still and silent, yet somehow still alive, their presence undeniable, a reminder that the gods of Egypt, once so feared and revered, still linger in stone. Divers speak of the eerie feeling of swimming past them, as though watched by eyes that have not closed in thousands of years. Inscriptions carved into stelae tell us more. One great stele discovered at Heracleion confirmed the city's role as a customs station, where goods entering Egypt by sea were taxed and recorded. But the language of the stele was not only administrative, it was also sacred, linking trade to divine authority. In Heracleion, commerce and worship were intertwined, the port serving both as a place of wealth and a place of gods. Offerings too have been found. Tiny statuettes of Osiris, gold jewelry, amulets shaped like sacred animals. These small tokens remind us that for the people of Heracleion, the gods were not abstract ideas, but living forces who demanded respect and gratitude. To lose favor with them would be unthinkable, especially in a city so exposed to the whims of the sea. And perhaps that is the most haunting irony. Despite their devotion, despite the towering statues and countless offerings, the gods did not, or perhaps could not, save Heracleion. The city sank, its temples submerged, its priests silenced. Yet in another sense, the gods endured. Their images remain, resting in the seabed, preserved better than many shrines on land. It is as if the sea itself became a temple, and the gods simply continued their watch beneath the waves. Far to the east, along the coast of India, lies a different kind of lost city. If Heracleion is grandeur, Dwarka is legend. For centuries, stories told of how Krishna's great city was swallowed by the sea after his death. To the faithful, it was not merely history but sacred truth. To scholars, it was myth. And yet, divers exploring the Gulf of Kambat reported something unexpected. Stone structures lying beneath the murky waters, spread across a wide area. Walls, steps, and tools were found, some dating back thousands of years. The possibility that the stories of Dwarka were rooted in a real, submerged city became tantalizingly close. The waters around Dwarka are not clear like those of the Mediterranean. They are dark, clouded with sediment, visibility often no more than a few feet. Diving here is disorienting, the world reduced to shapes that emerge suddenly and vanish just as quickly. Archaeologists working in these conditions must move slowly, carefully, their hands, often their best guides. To find a wall is to brush against it before seeing it. To uncover a stone tool is to feel its edge beneath the mud. The legend says that Krishna built Dwarka as a magnificent city, with grand palaces and wide streets, a place of wealth and beauty. When he departed this world, the sea rose and swallowed it, leaving only memory. Whether the ruins found beneath the waves match the grandeur of legend is uncertain. What is clear, however, is that humans lived, built, and thrived here thousands of years ago, and that the sea has indeed claimed their world. For believers, every shard of pottery, every submerged wall, is confirmation of the sacred texts. For archaeologists, they are clues in a puzzle that may rewrite parts of India's history. And for us, listening tonight, they are another reminder of the strange companionship between myth and memory, where stories whispered through generations often carry a seed of truth. Dwarka does not yield its secrets easily. The water there is thick with silt, stirred by shifting tides, making visibility poor even on calm days. For divers, the challenge is not only to discover, but to recognize, to separate the human from the natural. A stone may be a random rock, or it may be a carefully shaped block cut by hands thousands of years ago. Every dive is a meditation in patience, guided by touch as much as by sight. Imagine the diver moving slowly through this murk, hands extended, brushing through suspended grains of sand until they meet something solid. Fingers trace an edge, a right angle where none should exist naturally, a wall, a step, a doorway, each discovery small, tentative, but meaningful. Archaeology here is not about sudden clarity, but about fragments of evidence slowly accumulating until, together, they form a story. And yet, even these fragments inspire awe. Anchors carved from stone, beads worked with ancient care, tools left where they fell. Each artifact is a bridge across time, connecting the diver's hand to the person who last held that object thousands of years ago. To touch such an item is to collapse the centuries, to feel, however faintly, the pulse of a vanished life. The process does not end in the water. Once recovered, each object must be cleaned, documented, and studied. That too is slow, careful work. A bead encrusted with salt may take days to free from its shell of corrosion. A pot fragment must be matched to others like it, catalogued in meticulous detail. These are not glamorous tasks, but they are essential. Without them, the ruins remain mute. With them, they begin to speak.